Right, so we're going to go back to one of the short but sweet questions that you had, and it was about your favourite lake that you'd fished, which was the big pit in the Cotswolds. So we're just going to go in depth with that and just ask you to explain, paint the picture, blah blah blah.
Okay.
Shoot.
Yeah. It's obviously quite a large lake. It's, I don't know, 60, 65 acres I think, up in the Cotswolds, a lot of out of bounds, quite low stock I'd say. I don't know the stock, I hear so many numbers. I've had people telling me there's only 25 carp in there this year, but I've always believed between 40 and 50 carp in there. Quite a lot of it out of bounds. No bream, lots and lots of tench, and about 500 million tonne of crayfish. And
that's an understatement.
Yeah, probably an understatement. Swimmers, boaters, speedboats, floating swans, everything you could imagine of a
general public.
Swimmers. Park lake, water sports style place. It's a bit of a crazy place. But I think everything about it, all the difficulties, like just catching a carp from there was something that was always going to be a mega thing for me to do, just to catch one. So I think I've been on there for quite a few years now. I've done now 4 seasons. Not that much time in 4 seasons, but I just love it. I think there's such a buzz about the lake. For me, I know some people don't like it as much. I know you didn't really like it, did you? You did your head in a little bit, I think.
I just
on short time.
Yeah, I just couldn't do the amount of time that I wanted to.
But yeah, it's quite hard to explain why I love it so much and why it's my favourite lake, other than the fact that some of my best captures come from it. It's just, I get so excited every time I go up there. And because of the nature of it, with the out of bounds areas, you can
observe them.
Yeah, you can see some of the, potentially one of the best mirror carp in the country you can watch daily, which is really, really impressive thing to see.
Yeah.
And it's, with such a low stock, you start to notice some patterns with them. Again, in the out of bounds, like I've named certain carp that, they're not their actual names, they're just the names to me. And what else was I going to say?
So, for context, obviously, it's a hard enough lake if you're a full-timer, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're doing it on very, very limited time. I mean, in the 4 years you've done, how many nights do you reckon you've probably done?
I think I've done 61. I think that is the number. I think it's 61. Yeah.
So there's not a lot, and a lot of them have been overnighters. So
yeah.
You're not even being able to move on them if you see them the following morning.
No, I think for me it's always been limited. Like I've done not fished that much summer. I seem to get a bit in the spring. I've done a couple of autumns, so I can sort of, like in the spring I feel like I'm on to them and know what's happening. As long as I can get in the swims, I can get the results.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just like, because my time at times is so staggered, you're not really learning. It's like I said, the people who are doing 3-4 nights a week, they are struggling and they must see everything. So for me, it's really difficult. But I think that's part of the thing I love. Like there's so much against you, even for a full timer. Someone like me, there's so much against you. It's just it gets me really excited. And the first time I ever walked the place, I seen an absolute man off common, and that got me pretty excited straight away.
It was pretty big.
It's massive. I don't think it's no longer with us now. That one, I think it got after last year, but it's, like I said, 4 years, and this year I've seen a handful of carp I've never seen before in there. Bearing in mind you can watch them every day.
Yeah.
And that's quite exciting because you never know. They could, like, I had a conversation with our dad, and he reckons 10 years ago he's seen a carp there that was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Not a carp I've ever seen there, and I've never seen pictures of it being caught. So whether that still remains or it's gone, we don't know. But it's part of the excitement. It's although it's not unknown, there's an air of mystery to it on top of all the drama.
Yeah.
And that's what.
Yeah. So every fish is worth its weight in gold, isn't it? Because obviously it's so low stocked. So obviously that will tie into a session you'll never forget, which I believe is on the same lake.
Yeah. It was my 17th night, my 3rd season. So the first season I did 8 nights my first season, which again shows how limited time I did. For nothing, no surprise. In fact, I didn't see a carp show because it was at that time of year till my last night, or my last morning in fact. It was an hour or two before I pulled up. That was the first time I'd seen the show. Then my second season I had even less time. I got with a young daughter, I only did 7 nights. Again, I was probably even further away from my car then than I was the year before.
Yeah.
And then I came on to my third season. I started baiting an area which this car obviously got in because every time I turned up there was someone in there. And it was
Was that allergy or kraken?
Kraken. I started baiting with kraken, yeah. Lots of it, and a lot of crumb. In fact, I had one of my friends who was fishing at the time, he told me he'd seen fish showing in the area on 2 occasions. And once was 2 days after I baited, and the next time was 9 days after I baited, which sounds crazy with amount of crayfish in there.
Yeah.
But I put, I don't know, about 20 kilo in that evening, and it was a mixture of, there was everything to be honest. There was maize, I think there was some pellet, there was some crushed tigers, and lots of crumb. And that's why I did it, because I thought that crumb, even with the crays, 20 kilos or 15, 10 kilos, whatever it was of crumb, will stay there for a long, long time. And that's what I was trying to do in an area that wasn't fished.
Yeah.
But before I had a chance to fish it, I know of 2 guys who had been fishing it. So obviously they had seen stuff that I wasn't able to react to in that time.
Yeah.
So I was heading down now on my second night of the season. My mate had been up there 4 nights before, and he told me he'd seen fish in an area. So I was and ahhing because, you know, 4 days is a long time on a big pit, one wind change, and there could be a completely different area. But eventually I chose the swim that he said he'd seen them. Not that you could fish to where you'd seen them, because there was a buoy in front of you, because of all the swimmers and stuff.
Yeah.
So I was limited to 60 yards maximum, and like, if you see them showing, usually it's a lot further than that. But I remember it was another one I turned up super late. I think by the time I got set up, rods out and in the pit, it was probably midnight.
That's another thing to bear in mind. I mean, with a lot of these overnighters as well, I think, is you were doing a lot of them where you were turning up late in the dark and stuff as well.
Yeah.
So you're almost going on a whim every time you were.
Yeah. I would say most of my sessions, well, especially time of year dependent, I was very rarely getting it before 8 or 9 o'clock. So for a lot of the year, it is dark, or by the time...
Well, even summer, by the time you've done a lap and stuff.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time spamming in the dark and changing my rig's time and everything up in the dark, which was something I never thought I'd ever do, but I sort of learnt to do it there, even in the weed. In fact, I found it easier to lead up and find the spots in the dark than it was in the day, because there was nothing putting me off, there was no distractions.
Yeah.
But this time, for the first time ever, I put 3 rods on a spot. Partly because it was late, and partly because I could only find 1 spot. So I found 1 spot, I had 3 rods in it, and it was only a small spot. So my left rod was clean, the middle rod was a bit rubbish, but fishing helicopter rigs, and, you know, I knew I was fishing, and the third rod was a bit crappy. But again, I knew I'd be fishing. All yellows, because apparently they love a yellow in there. All plastics, because can't get away with hook bait in there because of the craze. Yeah. And it must have been, I don't know, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. Rod ripped off. I really can't remember the story, and you find it as hilarious as probably I would, because I rang you up after it. But I thought it was a tench. So I ran out, I picked into it, played it, thought it was tench, didn't fight at all, didn't get my waders on, which you usually would always have to do. I wasn't prepared to go in the lake. Luckily it didn't fight, so I could have been in a lot of trouble, I'm sure. It come in the net, dropped the net down, and just went and sat in the divot, which was odd, because usually I'd have got down and hooked it and released it. I think it was tense. So there was obviously something that made me think something different, but in my head it was tense. And I sat on my bed for a minute or so, and I thought, I'd best go look at it. So I went and flipped the torch on, and I was gobsmacked to see a carp. But not only to see a carp, it was this massive, big plated, scaly thing. Honestly, it literally blew my mind, and I couldn't work out what fish it was. Bearing in mind there ain't that many fish that look like that in the country. To not know what it was really is silly. But I think it was such a shock to me, such a surprise that I'd caught one, although I knew I would and I knew I could. Because it hadn't happened yet, you were always thinking when's it going to happen, and when it did, it blew my mind. And I remember, I rang you up. I was like, Paul, I've got one.
Well, I don't even think it was that, because I'm pretty sure what you were speaking weren't English.
No. all I remember is I was walking around.
Because I was fishing, wasn't I?
Yeah, yeah. I remember like, you packed up to come to see me and get the photograph done.
I lost one on the
And
phone.
you had a bite while I was on the
Yeah,
phone.
I packed everything else up and had the rods on the floor. And as I was on the phone to you, wasn't it? I was like, oh shit, I'm in.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It started fizzing.
Yeah.
But I was beasting it in, so I lost it, but it was only a small one.
And then I was on the phone to you after, and I know it's quite for a low stock lake. It is more common than it should be for people to catch more than one. If they do catch it, it's not irregular to have 2 bites. In fact, I've heard some people having 9 bites, which is crazy.
Yeah.
So if
Big
you have
water
one,
fishing, innit? If they move on you, they
Yeah,
sometimes
so-
are in groups.
if you have one, there's always a chance. And I don't know if you remember this. The rod I had to fish off, I didn't really cast, and while I was on the phone to you, the next one in the middle rod ripped off, and I thought that I assumed that was going to be a carp, but it was a 10-inch.
Yeah.
But it was all, it was such a buzzing moment. Like, it wasn't a PB at the time, although it was massive. It was £37.2.
Yeah.
It was a really big carp, really scaly.
It's one of the ones everyone wants, isn't it?
Yeah,
Although it's not one of the biggest, but it's up there, obviously.
Yeah.
But it's
definitely one of the 18 in my eyes. I've had people tell me it isn't, but they're obviously idiots.
yeah, they're talking crap.
Yeah.
Rich.
But yeah, it's definitely one of the 18. Unbelievable, potentially the best looking carp I've caught, and to be the first one from a water where I was told by quite a few people and yourselves that it was silly to keep fishing on such limited time, which you're probably right, I agree, but it was something I really wanted to do. And it was as enjoyable knowing that, not that I proved people wrong, but that I'd done what people said was going to be really difficult and probably a little bit silly, as well as catching something special. Like if that had been a £20 common, it turned out it was my second carp later, not long after, I'd have still been as buzzed, I'm sure, because it just.
I think you would have, but not as much. Once the shock went, you would be still more buzzing because of because of the carp it is.
Yeah.
If you say the name of that carp to anyone that's fishing there,
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, that's one.
Yeah, and probably a lot of people at the Cotswolds who don't even fish that one know that carp.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was obviously super buzzed. I didn't shut up about it. I remember being told to shut up about it because I just didn't stop talking about it. But that's what then moments do to you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a mega carp.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Scott. Cheers.
No problem.